it, Timmy.
You know, there was a bit of irony in responding to this article from Hank Hanegraaff. Take a look here. Among the reasons we can be certain that the book of Revelation was not written 25 years after the destruction of Jerusalem, 3 tower above the rest. Well, I don't think there are any other reasons. I think these 3 are really all Hank has to offer, and I think these 3 are really only 2 arguments. The first, that John should have mentioned AD 70 somehow or another in the book. That's just an unwarranted demand. There's plenty of other post-AD 70 Christian writings which don't mention the destruction of the temple. To make this seem necessary, Hank keeps insisting that you wouldn't write a history of New York City on terrorism without mentioning the Twin Towers now, would you? As if that even remotely resembles John recording a prophetic vision for us. And it's just silliness. And then his second point, of course, was that John must have been measuring an existing structure, and that's just a childish blunder based on simple infamiliarity with Ezekiel. I'm sorry to say it, folks, but the Bible Answer Man is either simply ignorant of this, or he's not informing you of this parallel because it damages his case. But, you know, what is Hank talking about? Maybe he has some of his spiritual fulfillment in mind when he says, among the reasons. I mean, I can't imagine what else he's talking about. You know, and of course, if you interpret Revelation literally and realize that absolutely not one part of it was fulfilled in any way in the first century, now the arguments for it referring to a yet future Great Tribulation, they would now number in the thousands, I suppose. So, whatever. But here's what's ironic about this. Hank doesn't have any points. He has 0 points. He says he has 3 that tower above the rest. He has 0 points, folks. But in making my original response to Hank, I realized that there are just way too many important counterpoints I need to make without making a video that would be several hours long. I just don't know what to do. I'm working on getting my videos shortened down and, you know, to the point, but to one point. That's what I'm trying to do. And so I'm going to be putting up several short videos here that start to show you all the problems that Hank's going to now have to deal with now that he's placed the composition of the apocalypse prior to AD 70. Problems galore. Welcome to Wackoville. Let's get started. Okay, Hank says this. If Revelation was written before AD 70, it is reasonable to assume that the vision given to John was meant to reveal the apocalyptic events surrounding the destruction of Jerusalem. So he's saying if it was written before AD 70, it's reasonable to assume it refers to AD 70. Well, not really, because there ain't a single thing in the apocalypse that occurred in 70 AD. But my first counterpoint is this. If we date the apocalypse prior to 70 AD, we make John into a false prophet. By placing the composition of the apocalypse prior to AD 70, and then assuming the apocalypse refers to AD 70, we make John into a false prophet. How so? Well, it's funny, really. It comes straight from Hank's little proof text here.
And there was given me a reed like unto a rod, and the angel stood, saying, Rise and measure the temple of God and the altar, and them that worship therein. But the court which is without the temple leave out and measure it not, for it is given unto the Gentiles. And the holy city shall they tread under foot 42 months.
In this prophecy, we are told only that the Gentiles trample the outer court for 42 months. No destruction of the temple is ever prophesied anywhere in the Apocalypse, and not here. No destruction of the temple is indicated. It's not indicated anywhere in the Apocalypse. In fact, that's a little problem you can mention to any preterist, Say, hey, where does the Apocalypse prophesy the destruction of the temple? Be careful asking them that. They'll hate you forever. But this dilemma is discussed by, not me, but again, scholars from Hank's side of the fence. Let's take a look at what Dr. Salmon says about this issue, and we'll begin on page 237 of his book, A Historical Introduction to the Study of the Books of the New Testament. And I'll provide the link to this in the description box below, so you can read it for yourself. Again, I do not understand how Vischer and Sabatier can reconcile their system with their adherence to what has now become the traditional rationalistic explanation of 12:2, viz., that we have here a false prophecy that in the siege of Jerusalem, the enemy should not succeed in capturing more than the outer court of the temple, which they were to hold for 42 months. How those within were to be provisioned for that time we are not told, but according to the theory of Vischer and Sabatier, we have in the book of Revelation a work published by a Christian who lived long enough after the siege of Jerusalem to know that the capture of the city, temple and all, had been complete. Now, these men, Vischer and Sabatier, they were busy cooking up theories about how the Apocalypse was based on pre-AD 70 material, okay? But the problem of the false prophecy for the Neronian dating can be seen here in this issue. The problem only arises due to the Neronian date theory. And a little further down the page, Salmon says this. These readers, he's talking about first century Christians here, these readers, every one of whom well knew that the temple was utterly destroyed, could not have put the modern interpretation on this passage. And when he says the modern interpretation here, folks, he is referring to this Neronian date of the Apocalypse. That idea has only been around since 1831. Just Google Neronian date in 1831 and you'll see what I mean. On page 238, though, Salmon goes on to say this. In my opinion, the consideration I had already urged is decisive, viz., that such a prediction as the apocalyptic seer is supposed to have made had no time to get into circulation before its failure would be so manifest as to utterly destroy the credit of the prophet. And this is the same page where Dr. Salmon informs the reader of the obvious parallel between Revelation 11 and Ezekiel 40. But then, right after that, he says this. And that in the Apocalypse the destruction of the city is contemplated as having already taken place may be inferred from what is said, 11:2, as to the non-measurement of the outer court, which is given up to be trodden underfoot by the Gentiles, the very words of Luke 21:24. Now, if you place the Apocalypse prior to AD 70, you absolutely must draw the parallel between Luke 21:24 and Revelation 11:2. You must. It must be done. And you got a contradiction on your hands, buddy. Preterists today think they can sweep this aside by merely stating the Romans entered the land 3.5 years prior to the destruction of the temple. You know, they keep wanting to insert this destruction of the temple, even though no such thing is ever prophesied in the book. And remember what I said, Ask a preterist to show you where the apocalypse prophesies the destruction of the temple. They can't. It's not there. But yeah, they think they can just sweep this aside. But the more honest Neronians of the past generations acknowledged this problem and attempted to deal with it. People today just want to sweep it aside. They're lazy, sloppy, perhaps even deceptive. A lot of these preterist scholars don't want their audience to know that the past generation here has already been through this extensively and abandoned it because it is phony baloney. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video, and please visit my website for further information. There's a place there where you can send me email. Send me questions if you like. I'll make a video responding. And please consider supporting me through Patreon or PayPal. Please do. Thanks again. See you next time.